So please welcome the Policing Minister, Chris Philp.
Great. Well, Julie, thank you very much indeed for that introduction. Thank you, everyone, for your welcome as well. The Home Secretary was due to be here giving this speech this morning, but it's been another eventful week in politics, I think it's fair to say. I believe the new Home Secretary is going to be joining you tomorrow to say a few words. I think today he's busy with the judgment, busy being handed down next door, reading into the brief and probably cleaning the scorch marks off the office walls as well. But look, let me start by just saying a word about the importance of the relationship between ministers, politicians and the police. I gave a statement some of you may have seen in Parliament last Thursday in which I stressed, echoing the words of the Prime Minister a few days beforehand, that the operational independence of the police is something that is very important. It's something which this government, this Prime Minister, Home Secretary and I as Police Minister take very seriously and will always respect. This is a government that does support the police. We believe the police do a good job in difficult circumstances. But of course that means that where necessary we will hold the police to account, just as police and crime commissioners and elected mayors up and down the country do as well. But I wanted just to start by making clear the importance of our respect for the operational independence of policing and our support for the whole policing family. And I'd like to develop that by saying a huge thank you. A huge thank you to everyone involved in delivering policing across England and Wales. Chief Constables, 150,000 police officers, police staff, special constables, PCSOs, police and crime commissioners, and everybody else involved in keeping us and our families safe. I know I speak for the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, the government, parliamentarians, and most importantly, the public, when I say a huge thank you. Very often, officers put themselves in the line of danger to keep the rest of us safe on a daily basis. I was struck very powerfully at the Police Bravery Awards here in London last July, how often officers put themselves at risk to keep us safe. I was struck by the sacrifice of officers like Sergeant Graham Saville of Nottinghamshire, who lost his life trying to save a member of the public on a train line. And I was struck meeting the families of officers who lost their lives at the police memorial event in Cardiff a month or two ago, the sacrifices that are made daily for the sake of the rest of us. I'm deeply conscious of that, deeply grateful for it, and I take this opportunity to say a huge thank you. A huge thank you also because we are delivering collectively results. It's not always apparent in the way the media report crime. It's not always apparent in the way the public perceive crime either. But the truth is, crime is coming down. Like for like, according to the Crime Survey of England and Wales, the only reliable long-term measure of crime according to the Office for National Statistics, overall crime like for like is down 54% since 2010, just to pick a date at random. And in the last year, down around about 10%, all crime down around 10% according to that survey. So we are delivering results. We are getting crime down. Police forces are improving their performance. As Donna said just a moment ago, two forces, Cleveland and Gloucestershire, have come out of Engage, come out of special measures just in the last year. So I think we can be proud of those achievements. I think policing can also be proud that it's risen to some challenges recently. The coronation of His Majesty the King being an example here in central London a few months ago. The largest policing operation, I think, in recent times, possibly ever. I think there were, on the day of the coronation itself, somewhere in the region of 15,000 officers deployed in central London from forces across the country. There were some significant threats to that event, as many people here will be aware. And yet the eyes of the world were upon us. Hundreds of millions of people were watching, and that event passed off without significant incident, thanks to the tireless work, both publicly and behind the scenes, of the police. More recently, of course, there have been some very challenging public protests to police in central London. And I know the police have a difficult job to do. Many officers have been injured in discharging their duties. Of course, we all recognise the right to peaceful protest, and we all, of course, support that. But we don't support violence or thuggery on the streets. We don't support and must not support the glorification of acts of terrorism or support for proscribed organisations like Hamas. We don't support and cannot ever support racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia in any form. We do not and will not support inciting racial hatred, which is, of course, an offence under Section 18 of the Public Order Act 1986. These are important laws, these are important principles, and we expect the police to robustly and comprehensively enforce those laws without fear or favour, applied equally to all groups. And I have every confidence that is what will happen. And I'd like to just thank again those officers who have been injured recently in the course of their duties in central London in recent weeks. Now, we've had some other successes in the last year besides the reduction in crime that I mentioned already. And foremost amongst those are the record number of police officers that we now have. I think Donna touched on this. We have, as of the most recent public figures, we have 149,566 police officers. I am counting every single one. And that is more than we've ever had before. It's about 3,500 more than the previous peak, which was in 2010, and it's about 21,000 more than we had 3 years ago. I'm determined that we maintain those officer numbers going forward. A number of forces have over-recruited in the last year or so in order to make up for a shortfall that arose in the Metropolitan Police. And as I've said previously, we're going to make sure the financial arrangements for the next financial year are such that you will be able to continue with those elevated levels above the police uplift target throughout the course of the next financial year, so that we maintain those total record numbers and you maintain your over-recruitment throughout the next year. I'm also determined to make sure that as much money as possible gets to you on the front line. I don't want to see money being sort of wasted on unnecessary bureaucracy. We managed to get an extra, it was over £500 million the current financial year, extra to the front line, and I am hopeful, I go as far as to say confident, that we can manage something similar for the next financial year. That'll obviously be announced in the police funding settlement in December. And of course, next financial year, as already flagged, we will be funding the totality of the pay rise above 2.5%. So that should make sure you have the resources, the financial resources on the front line to keep the public safe. Now, in addition to that, I've been working very hard in the last year to try and reduce some of the burdens which have been holding police back. I remember in my first week as police minister, it was around about a year ago, I had a number of comments made to me by everyone from Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, through to frontline emergency response teams in Croydon, the borough that I represent in Parliament. And the issues were raised concerning the demands posed by mental health work on policing, things like Home Office counting rules being too bureaucratic, and demands placed upon policing by CPS requirements like redaction. Those were the things I was asked about in my first week. And we have been working tirelessly on those subsequently, and we've had some success. We have already amended the Home Office counting rules in a way that removes duplicate recording of some crimes. It'll save about 400,000 hours a year of police time, and there are more changes coming. I think Chief Constable Chris Rowley, who may be here from Lancashire, is doing some more work on that will take it even further. We've rolled out a national partnership agreement delivering right care, right person across the whole country. It was pioneered, of course, by Lee Freeman when he was Chief Constable in Humberside, saving 17,000 hours a year in Humberside. We've got an agreement to roll that out nationally. I know everyone here is working on that locally. I think there are now 5 forces already, including the Met, which have deployed that. And in fact, I saw some figures from the Met. They started about 2 weeks ago. And in its first week of operation, it saved 7,000 hours of time in 1 week in the Metropolitan Police, because the work was done by the ambulance service and the NHS, which is, of course, better for the patient because they require a medical response, not a police response, where there is no criminality and where there is no threat to public safety or the individual's safety. And those 7,000 hours in that 1 week alone can be spent keeping the public safe, which is what we want to see. So please do expedite the rollout of Right Care, Right Person in your area. I would like to see it rolled out by the end of next year, the end of 2024, across the entirety of England and Wales. Please work towards that challenge. It'll make a difference to individuals who need medical help, and it will make a huge difference to public safety in your respective areas. Regarding CPS burdens, there has been a little bit less progress there, if I'm completely honest, but I had a very constructive, despite significant effort, I would add, I had a very constructive meeting with the new Director of Public Prosecutions, Stephen Parkinson, a week or so ago, and I am, I would say, optimistic that there is opportunity to work very constructively with him to reduce some of the burdens on policing. There are already some very good technical solutions to alleviate redaction burdens. There are some AI-driven solutions that automate the redaction process for text, and there'll soon be some ones ready to deal with AV, audio-visual redaction, which I'd strongly urge you to adopt locally, but we are working on these issues nationally as well. So taken together, we've got financial resources to the front line, we've got record police numbers that I'm confident we can and will maintain going forward, and we are working on reducing the burdens that keep officers away from frontline work. So, what would I like in return for all of that? Well, having done all of that, I think the ask from the government, the ask from Parliament is quite simple. What we would like is common sense policing, using those additional and freed up resources. And what I mean by common sense policing, it's very simple. I would like to see a real focus on, and of course many people are working on this already, just to be clear, a real focus on preventing crime, firstly, a real focus on protecting the public, including through very active neighbourhood policing that we've heard referenced, and a real focus on prosecuting criminals. Preventing crime, protecting the public, prosecuting criminals. Very straightforward, very simple. Anything which goes beyond that is, in some senses, a bit of a distraction. And I think in terms of rebuilding trust and confidence in policing, of course there are issues of historic misconduct and indeed some cases of current misconduct that need to be addressed and are being addressed by policing. We spent a lot of time looking at that over the last year as well, responding to the Casey review and so on. But in addition to dealing with those issues of conduct and integrity, I think what will really build public trust and confidence in policing is delivering on those basics: prevent, protect, prosecute. And if we do that, if we do the basic things the public wants, there is no question in my mind we will enjoy their confidence. And I think if there's one particular challenge I would lay out to policing for the coming year, it is to really focus on the conviction rate, the clear-up rate, the proportion of criminals who end up getting prosecuted and dealt with by the court system. I would like to see it be higher than it currently is. There is very significant variability between forces. The best performing forces are getting on for 3 times higher than the worst performing forces, and there are figures available by force that I'm sure you've all looked at. So that is my challenge for the coming year: increase that clear-up rate. If we do that, I think we're going to drive crime down even further than the 10% we managed in the last year. And look, there are some particular areas where I'm keen to focus. Violence against women and girls, which is the topic of the King's Speech debate, amongst other things, later on today, is one of those. Operation Soteria, to improve the prosecution rate for rapes and serious sexual assault, is extremely important. That has been increasing recently, but from a low base, and it needs to go further. We also want to do more on tackling serious violence. And I think there again is more we can do here. I attended on Saturday morning the funeral of Eliane Andam in Croydon. She was a 15-year-old schoolgirl who was tragically murdered at 8:30 on the morning of September the 27th, trying to protect her friend from an aggressive ex-boyfriend, and in so doing was stabbed to death. And sitting at her funeral and watching her mum, Dorcas, and her father, Michael, her little brother, their son, Kobe, in tears as her coffin left the church, it just struck me how important this mission is to tackle serious violence, to take knives off our streets, to make sure young people don't lose their lives in the way Eliane tragically did. So let's redouble our efforts. Let's continue working with violence reduction units to intervene and put young people back on a better path early on. I think there's more work we can do to analyse data from other agencies, mental health, schools, social services, as well as police data, to identify people, young people especially, who are on the wrong track and intervene before something like this happens. The alleged perpetrator in this case was only 17 years old himself and had come to the attention of the authorities previously. So I think that kind of intervention can make a difference. I think we should be confident in the use of stop and search. And talking to members of Eliane's family, they were painfully aware that if that alleged perpetrator had been stopped and searched on his way to that fatal scene, perhaps that knife would have been taken off him and the murder would never have happened. Of course, it needs to be done respectfully. Of course, it needs to be done lawfully. But it does work in taking knives off our streets. In London, about 400 knives a month are taken off the streets through the use of stop and search. So I'd like our officers to be confident in using that power respectfully within the law to protect our communities and perhaps avoid some of those funerals like Eliane's that I attended last Saturday. There's some technology that we're working on that may be able to scan for knives at a distance, not ready to deploy yet, but we're working hard on it. Hopefully it will be within a year or so. That would obviously make it dramatically easier to take knives off our streets. We're legislating as well. There are measures in the criminal justice bill introduced, I think, yesterday, and some further measures we're going to be legislating for via secondary legislation that will, for example, ban a whole range of zombie knives and machetes that are currently legal, double the sentence for supplying a knife to someone under 18, and create a new offence of possessing a knife with intent to cause harm, which will have a sentence double the current maximum. And of course, through the Online Safety Bill, now the Online Safety Act, there is a lot of work being done to stop the sale of knives online as well. So let's work together to do more to avoid tragedies like Eliane's. I'm very grateful to policing and to Gavin, where's Gavin? Over there, for the commitment you made back in late August on the topic of increasing clear-up rates, to always pursue reasonable lines of inquiry where they exist for all crimes, and not to screen crimes out because they're perceived as minor. That is something the public expect. Where there is evidence that could be followed up, even for something that may historically have been considered minor, it is right that evidence is pursued. The public expect, frankly, nothing less. So I'm delighted by the commitment that the MPCC made and by the support the College of Policing and Andy Marsh, if he's here, gave to that initiative, which of course is now going to be inspected regularly by the inspectorate. So thank you to Andy Cook, if he's here, and the inspectors who will now incorporate that requirement into their regular peel inspections and do a thematic inspection next spring to make sure the policy is being carried out in practice. The public do expect that if their car is stolen, their phone is stolen, there's a domestic burglary, where there's shoplifting, whatever it may be, if there is evidence that can be followed up, whether it's CCTV evidence, whether it's geolocation data from an iPhone, whatever it may be, stolen goods advertised for sale online, that should always be followed up. And I'm grateful for the commitment that it will be. And speaking of shoplifting, let me thank Chief Constable Amanda Blakeman, if she's here, for the plan she published a few weeks ago on shoplifting, a comprehensive action plan to clamp down on the scourge of shoplifting. It's costing £1 billion a year in stolen goods, another £1 billion a year in preventative measures being taken by retailers. We cannot have a situation like in some American cities where looting and lawlessness occurs on a daily basis, driving retailers out of business. Not in this country, not in this jurisdiction, not on my watch. So I'm grateful to Amanda for the plan she set out around police attending, prioritising attending where there is a suspect that's been detained by store staff, where a staff member has been assaulted, or where attendance is required to secure evidence. And for always following up that evidence, including CCT evidence, where it's available. We're going to talk a bit later about artificial intelligence and facial recognition. Gavin touched on it in his speech a moment ago. But the algorithms are now so advanced, the AI algorithms are now so advanced that even if an image is blurry or partially obscured, it can be matched against the custody image database. And I would urge everyone to search every single crime scene photo of a suspect against not just your forced custody database, but the full police national database to get a match. And I'm absolutely convinced if we double or triple or quadruple the number of searches we do, then we will catch a lot, thousands, possibly even tens of thousands of additional criminals. We'll talk about that a bit more later on this afternoon. Now, let me say a word. Oh, and by the way, I'd just like to repeat my thanks to Katie Bourne and the work she's done on Project Pegasus. Is Katie here? Where's Katie? There's Katie over there. Fantastic work setting that up. Well done for getting it funded by retailers. You're going to go after organised criminal gangs who are shoplifting. It's going to make a huge difference. Katie, thank you for that excellent initiative. Let me say a word about antisocial behaviour. We have funded an antisocial behaviour action plan. The public obviously deeply dislike antisocial behaviour. It makes the public feel unsafe on their own high streets, in their own parks. It's right that we fight it. The plan is backed by £160 million of funding. One of the key elements of it are antisocial behaviour hotspot patrols, which are being piloted in 10 force areas. And I've got to say, the early results, it's only been going for 3 or 4 months, the early results are extraordinary. I think Andrew Snowden, the PCC in Lancashire, was saying that in the areas he's been trialling it, which include Blackpool, antisocial behaviour is down by 36%. Similar results from counties like Staffordshire, and I think in Essex as well, where on Southend, Seafront, Roger Hurst was saying ASB is down by 25 or 30% as well, thanks to these patrols. From April of next year, every force in the country, all 43, will have funding that should provide for somewhere between 20 and 30,000 hours each of extra hotspot patrolling to tackle antisocial behaviour. The evidence is that it has a huge effect. There have been already 250 arrests in just a few months, just in those early pilot forces, 600 stop and searches, and 1,000 enforcement actions. It really does work, and it's going to be rolled out nationwide, fully funded, in addition to your regular grants from April of next year. I'd like to just finally say a word about drugs. I'm combating drugs minister as well. Drugs contribute to something like 1/3 to 1/2 of offending, whether it's acquisitive crime or whether it's violence associated with supply. We need to do more here, I think. We're doing some work at the border with Border Force to really clamp down on drugs coming into the country at various ports, investing in more technology and some other work as well. We're working on county lines. We've closed down 1,700 county lines since last April, working particularly on lines emanating from London, Birmingham, Liverpool and Manchester. But we'd also like to do more on testing and treatment, because if we can get addicts referred into treatment, it'll stop them offending. We've now funded an extra 50,000 treatment places. We put £600 million behind that over 3 years, but we'd like to see more referrals into treatment. So if your forces encounter somebody who is seriously addicted, particularly to opioids, please make sure they get referred into treatment. Please make sure there's a pre-sentence report prepared so the judge knows on sentencing there is a treatment requirement. Use your conditional caution powers as well to get people into treatment. Chief Constable Richard Lewis, who leads for the MPCC on this, is doing some great work, but we need to get more people treated. We also need to target organised criminal gangs, which ROCUs, our leading but territorial forces, will work on as well. And as Donna said, let's be alert to synthetic opioids. Fentanyl in particular has devastated communities in the USA, over 100,000 deaths a year. It is mercifully rare here in the UK, but we need to be extremely vigilant. We need to be vigilant not just to fentanyl, but also to nitazines and other synthetic opioids. If you get any hint of this flaring up in your force area, please make sure you report it into our combating drugs unit and into the NCA so we can jump on it. We do not want synthetic opioids in our country. They devastate lives. So let's continue to focus on that drug scourge. Look, I could talk for a long time, Julie, but it's probably you've probably heard enough from me this morning, and you've probably heard enough from me over the last year as well. I don't know, but look, there's a lot more to do in the coming year to use these extra resources to make sure our police are on the front line. Common sense policing, prevention, protection, and prosecution. If we do those things, I think we will command the trust and confidence of the public. We will deliver our mission, which is to keep our fellow citizens safe. I think we've made huge progress in the last year, huge progress on some of those conduct and integrity issues, huge progress in delivering record police numbers, huge progress in getting crime down by 10%. Those are achievements of which I think policing can rightly be extremely proud. It's an honour and a privilege to work with you on this mission. I'm still in post. I wasn't reshuffled a couple of days ago. So given that, thankfully, I am looking forward to continuing to work with you in the year ahead. Ours is a vital mission. Let's work together to keep the British public safe. Thank you.